On a lonely desert moon far from the busy trade routes of the galaxy, a human explorer named Ethan Cole searched for lost things. His small ship landed near the ruins of an ancient city, half buried under endless golden sand. Wind howled through broken towers and time had erased almost every sign of life. Ethan walked slowly, holding a scanner in one hand, hoping to find old technology or artifacts that could help him pay off his ship's repairs. But what he found was something very different. He stopped near a collapsed archway. The scanner began to flicker strangely, showing readings it had never shown before. The sand beneath his boots shimmered faintly as if something below the surface was alive. Ethan knelt down, brushing the grains aside with his gloved hands. The more he brushed, the brighter the glow became until a small crystal lamp appeared, glowing softly blue. It was smooth, perfectly shaped, and felt warm like a living heart. Ethan turned it over carefully. The markings on its surface moved when the light hit them. They were not any language he knew, but they looked ancient and sacred. His curiosity grew stronger. He whispered to himself, "You've been waiting a long time, haven't you?" His voice echoed weakly in the empty ruins. Then, without thinking much, he wiped away the last bit of sand and gently touched the center of the lamp. In an instant, the air around him began to tremble. The sky darkened even though it was day, and the sand lifted off the ground as if pulled by an invisible storm. Ethan took a few steps back, shielding his eyes. A bright column of light burst out of the lamp, reaching up into the heavens. Inside that light, a figure began to form. A woman, tall and graceful, her hair like liquid silver, her eyes glowing softly like stars. She hovered for a moment, her body made of shimmering mist that slowly solidified into a real shape. When the light faded, she stood before Ethan, barefoot, dressed in flowing fabric that sparkled like the night sky. Her skin carried patterns that moved like constellations, and her gaze was calm but powerful. Ethan couldn't speak for a moment. He had seen alien races before, but nothing like this. The being looked both human and something more, something ancient, wise, and strange. The woman looked around the ruins, her voice soft yet echoing through the air. "Another one," she said quietly. "Another soul who seeks the lamp." She turned her gaze toward Ethan and tilted her head slightly. "You freed me. By the ancient law, you are granted 3 wishes. Speak, and they shall be done." Ethan blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. "3 wishes?" he asked carefully. She nodded, crossing her hands in front of her. "I am Lunara, the bound spirit of the lamp. For thousands of years I have served those who found me. Name your desires, human, and they will be granted." Ethan could see something in her eyes, some exhaustion, maybe sadness. It wasn't what he expected. He thought she would sound proud or powerful, but instead, she looked tired. "How long have you been here?" he asked quietly. Lunara blinked in surprise. 1,000 years, perhaps more. Time has no meaning when one is trapped. Ethan took a slow breath. The air around them had grown calm again, the storm fading away. He looked at her and said softly, "You must have been lonely." No one had ever said that to her before. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She only stared at him, unsure how to respond. Most beings who found her demanded riches, power, or eternal youth. No one had ever cared about her feelings. Ethan smiled faintly. "Well, I guess it's nice to meet you, Lunara. I'm Ethan. I wasn't really looking for wishes today." Her expression softened a little, though confusion lingered. "You do not desire anything? No kingdom, no treasure, no life everlasting?" He shook his head. "I'm just trying to survive, and maybe fix my ship before the next storm eats it." For the first time in centuries, Lunara felt something stir inside her, a strange warmth she hadn't known since before her imprisonment. "Humans," she murmured to herself. "Always so. Unexpected." Ethan chuckled lightly. "That's one way to put it." She studied him, trying to understand why his heart felt so quiet compared to the countless others she had met. There was no hunger for power, no greed, only calm curiosity. The ruins around them glowed faintly in the starlight, the remains of her old world standing as silent witnesses. The breeze carried the faint smell of ozone and dust. For a long time, neither of them spoke. It was as if both knew something rare had happened. Not just a meeting of 2 beings from different worlds, but a crossing of something deeper. Lunara finally said, "Very well, Ethan Cole of Earth, you are my new master. Speak your first wish when your heart decides." Ethan looked at her with thoughtful eyes. "All right," he said quietly. But before I make a wish, maybe you can tell me what freedom means to you." The question caught her off guard completely. For the first time, Lunara did not know the answer. The stars above flickered like they were waiting for her reply, but she stayed silent, her eyes reflecting both confusion and wonder. In all her long existence, no one had ever asked her that. Gloves. "You don't have to answer now," he said quietly. "Maybe someday you'll know." Lunara slowly stepped closer. "Humans are strange," she said softly. "You freed me from the lamp, yet you ask for nothing. You show kindness when all others demanded control." He shrugged. "Maybe we're not as bad as people say out there." Lunara tilted her head slightly. "Your kind is feared in many parts of the galaxy. They call you Deathworlders. They say your planet tried to kill you every day and somehow you survived. But I see no monster here." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe surviving a hard world teaches you to value small things, like peace and kindness." The way he spoke carried no pride, only quiet truth. Lunara felt a strange pull inside her chest. She could sense that his heart was steady and his intentions pure. Yet she didn't understand why someone would give up their wishes so easily. "You still have 3, she reminded him. He looked up at her, the fading sunlight reflecting in his eyes. "Then my first wish is simple," he said. "I wish you weren't bound anymore." The words froze her where she stood. The air around them grew heavy, the sand beginning to rise again as if the planet itself heard his voice. "What did you say?" she whispered. Ethan stood now, his tone calm and clear. "You've been trapped long enough. I don't want power. I don't want gold or a crown. I just want you to be free, Lunara." Her breath caught. No one had ever made such a wish before. To free a genie was to break a rule older than most civilizations. The lamp she had been bound to began to glow again on the ground, humming like it had a heartbeat. She stared at it in disbelief. "Ethan, that wish cannot be undone once spoken. Do you understand what you are asking?" "I do," he said simply. "You've served enough masters. Maybe it's time someone served you. With kindness." The light around them began to grow brighter, almost blinding. The lamp cracked with a sound like thunder, but soft and distant. Lunara gasped as the glow surrounded her, wrapping her in ribbons of golden energy. She felt the ancient bonds that had held her soul for millennia begin to fall away one by one. The chains she couldn't see but always felt, the invisible weight that had pressed against her heart, vanished. She fell to her knees as the magic faded, trembling as if the whole world had changed. For the first time in her existence, she could feel her own heartbeat. She could breathe without command. The stars above seemed brighter, the air sharper. Her body felt heavy, alive and real. Ethan rushed forward and caught her before she collapsed. "Hey, are you all right?" Lunara looked up at him with wide eyes. "It's gone," she whispered. "The lamp." "The curse. It's all gone." The broken pieces of the crystal lamp lay scattered in the sand, now lifeless and dull. Ethan looked at them, then back at her. "Good," he said with a smile. "It's about time someone set you free." Tears welled up in her glowing eyes, something she didn't know she could even produce. You gave up everything for me. You could have had anything." "I already got what I wanted," Ethan replied. "To do something right." Lunara stared at him, her heart heavy with feelings she couldn't name. Gratitude, confusion, admiration, maybe all of them mixed together. She placed her hand over her chest, feeling the steady rhythm there. "I can feel it," she whispered. "My heart. It's real. I am alive." Ethan smiled gently. "Welcome back to life, Lunara." She let out a soft laugh, though it was mixed with disbelief. "No one has ever wished for my freedom. Most called me a tool, a legend, or a danger. You're the first who saw me as someone. Maybe you were never just a legend," Ethan said. "Maybe you were just waiting for the right person to talk to you like one." The stars came out fully now, spreading like glitter across the dark sky. The ruins around them seemed peaceful, almost holy in the quiet night. Lunara stood again, her steps uncertain, her body adjusting to its new weight. She looked at her hands and felt the faint hum of fading power. The galaxy suddenly felt endless, and she was finally a part of it, not trapped beneath it. She turned toward Ethan. "You still have 2 wishes left," she said softly. He shook his head. "I don't think I'll need them." Lunara smiled faintly. "Then perhaps I'll stay until you decide." He nodded. "You can stay as long as you like." The wind brushed between them, carrying the warmth of distant stars. In that quiet, two very different souls, one human and one once divine, shared something rare and fragile, a moment of peace. And as the night deepened, Lunara looked at Ethan and realized that for the first time in thousands of years she didn't want to disappear. She wanted to see what freedom really meant, beside him. The next morning, soft light touched the broken stones of the ancient ruins. The sand shimmered under the suns and the air smelled clean after the night wind. Lunara stood quietly on a high rock watching the golden horizon. The warmth on her skin felt strange but beautiful. She had never felt sunlight before, not like this. For thousands of years she had known light only as magic, never as warmth. Now every breath, every sound, and every touch felt new. Ethan came walking up the slope carrying a small container of water and some food rations. His clothes were dusty, his boots worn, but his smile was steady. "Morning," he said, handing her a bottle. "You should drink. The desert's not kind to new travelers." Lunara took it carefully, turning it in her hands. "Humans drink so often," she said softly, curious. "Before, I never needed to." "That's because you weren't really living," Ethan replied. "Now you are." She lifted the bottle and drank slowly. The water was warm, but it felt wonderful. She laughed quietly. "It tastes alive," Ethan chuckled. "That's one way to say it." They walked together through the ruins as he scanned for salvageable parts. Lunara stayed close, fascinated by everything. The wind pushing at her hair, the crunch of sand beneath her feet, even the way her heart beat faster when she tried to keep up with him. She was no longer a being of pure energy. She could tire now, breathe now, feel now. "Ethan," she said after a while, "why do you stay out here alone? There are many worlds, many people. Why wander such empty places?" He shrugged lightly. "I guess I like peace. Out here no one tells you who to be or what to do. And sometimes I find things that tell stories. Old things. Like you." Lunara smiled faintly at his words. "Old things," she repeated. "Yes, I have been that for too long." They stopped near his small ship, resting half buried in sand. Its outer panels were scratched and dented, the engines half broken. Ethan knelt beside one of the panels, using a spanner to loosen a bolt. Lunara crouched beside him, studying the machine with glowing eyes. "You fixed this yourself?" "Mostly," he said. "Humans are good at fixing broken things." She tilted her head, watching him work. "That's what you did with me," she said softly. Ethan paused, looking at her. For a moment he said nothing, then smiled gently. "No, Lunara. You weren't broken. Just trapped." Her chest warmed at his words. She didn't know why, but they made her feel lighter. She watched his hands move with focus and care. Every turn of the tool seemed full of purpose. "You treat machines as if they're alive," she noted. He nodded. "Everything that's built has a story. I guess I try to listen." For a long while they worked together. Ethan repaired wires while Lunara helped by reading symbols etched into old panels that only she could understand. At one point she placed her hand over a power conduit, and it hummed softly as if it remembered her touch. A small spark of her ancient energy pulsed through the ship, restoring a circuit. Ethan looked up, impressed. "You still have some magic left, huh?" She nodded slightly. "Not much. It fades more every hour, but maybe it's better that way. The universe gave me too much power once. Now it gives me a chance to live instead." He smiled. "Sounds like a fair trade." By evening they had made progress. The ship's lights flickered on for the first time in days. Ethan leaned against the hull, wiping his forehead. Lunara sat beside him, watching the twin moons rise. Their pale glow reflected in her silver eyes. "I can hear the stars," she whispered. "Their songs? Softer now. When I was bound, they sounded like thunder. Now they sound like wind." Ethan looked up at the night sky. "Maybe you're hearing peace." She turned to him, studying his face. "You speak like an old soul, Ethan Cole." He laughed quietly. "Maybe I just spent too much time alone." She hesitated, then said softly, "You are not alone now." The words hung in the air. Ethan met her gaze, and for a brief moment something passed between them. Something gentle and wordless. A connection born not from magic, but from shared silence. Lunara looked away, feeling her heart beat faster again. "When I was trapped, I dreamed of being free. But now that I am, I don't know what to do with it." Ethan leaned back, his tone calm. "Then start small. Eat, walk, breathe, laugh. That's what freedom is. It's not about power. It's about living the small moments." She smiled softly, repeating his words in her mind. Living the small moments. It sounded almost sacred. As the night deepened, a gentle breeze blew through the desert. The ship's lights glowed faintly, casting warm shadows over the sand. Lunara leaned her head against the hull, listening to the hum of the repaired engine. For the first time she felt tired, not from magic, but from life itself. Ethan noticed and handed her a blanket. "You'll need this. Nights get cold here." She took it, running her fingers over the soft fabric. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You're welcome," he replied. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll try flying again." She nodded, wrapping herself in the blanket. The feeling of warmth was strange but comforting. She looked at the stars one more time before closing her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered, "when you wished for my freedom, did you ever think it might change your life too?" He smiled faintly, looking at the glowing horizon. Maybe that was the point. And as Lunara drifted into her first true sleep in thousands of years, a soft smile touched her lips. She didn't know where their journey would lead, but for the first time since the beginning of her existence, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The soft hum of the ship filled the air as dawn rose over the endless desert. The twin suns painted the sky with orange and silver light, and dust floated like glowing mist above the dunes. Inside the small ship, Ethan worked by the control panel, tightening wires and adjusting the display. Lunara sat nearby, watching him with quiet curiosity. Every sound, every spark, every flicker of energy fascinated her. She was still learning what it meant to be alive. Her body felt heavy in the mornings, her thoughts slow, her heart steady and warm. She no longer floated through time like a drifting spirit. Now she had weight, presence, and limits. When Ethan noticed her staring, he smiled. "You'll burn a hole in my head if you keep looking like that," he joked. Lunara blinked, surprised. "Burn a hole? Why would I do that?" He laughed softly. "It's just an expression. Means you're staring too hard." She tilted her head. "Humans use strange words. I never know when you're serious." "That's half the fun," he said. Lunara smiled faintly. "You are difficult to understand, Ethan Cole." He nodded. "Most people think that." For a while they worked in comfortable silence. Then when Ethan reached for a heavy engine panel, he lost balance slightly. Lunara moved quickly and helped him steady it with surprising strength. Their hands brushed for a moment. Something inside her chest jumped, a feeling she couldn't name but didn't dislike. "You're stronger than you look," he said. "I carried worlds once," she replied softly, almost to herself. He looked at her for a moment, then back to the engine. "Guess this ship is light work for you then." Lunara smiled again, but her eyes seemed distant. Memories were returning bit by bit like faint echoes through time. She could see flashes, palaces made of crystal, endless halls of light, voices calling her name not in love but in command. For centuries, beings from across galaxies had summoned her, used her power, then sealed her away again. Every wish granted had stolen a piece of her soul. That night, while Ethan slept in his chair, she sat near the window, staring out into the dark sky. The stars looked so close she could almost touch them. Her reflection shimmered in the glass. She saw herself not as a genie of light, but as a woman with tired eyes. She thought of Ethan's wish, of the moment the lamp broke and her heart began to beat. A tear rolled down her cheek. It startled her. She touched it with her fingertip, amazed at its warmth. "So this is sorrow," she whispered, "and peace together." When morning came, Ethan woke to find her leaning against the wall, half asleep. "You didn't rest," he said gently. "I did not need to." "My thoughts were too loud," she replied. He poured her some water. "Thinking about the past?" "Yes," she said quietly. "About all the centuries I spent waiting for a kind soul, and about how strange it feels that it was a human who gave me freedom." Ethan smiled faintly. "We're full of surprises." Lunara looked down at her hands. "I used a small spark of my power yesterday to fix your circuit. It felt wrong. It drained me." "You shouldn't push yourself," he said softly. "You don't have to prove anything to me." She met his eyes. "I did not do it to prove. I did it because I wanted to help." He nodded slowly. "Then thank you." For a moment silence hung between them again, gentle and peaceful. But then suddenly, the ship began to shake slightly. A low beeping sound came from the radar. Ethan frowned and walked to the controls. "That's strange. Something's approaching." Lunara stood beside him, watching the glowing dots on the screen. "Another ship?" "Probably. Could be scavengers or patrol drones. Either way, we should be careful." He pressed a few buttons, dimming the lights. Through the window, a faint glimmer appeared on the horizon, a silver craft moving slowly, scanning the ground. Lunara's expression hardened. I know that kind of ship. It belongs to collectors. They hunt relics from ancient worlds. If they find me, they will try to bind me again. Ethan turned sharply toward her. Then we won't let that happen. She shook her head. They are powerful. They believe genies are property, not people. Ethan took a steady breath. You're not property, and you're definitely not alone. The words struck deep into her heart. No one had ever said them before. She felt her throat tighten, her chest heavy with something close to gratitude. You always say things that make me feel strange inside, she whispered. He smiled softly. That's called being human. They waited quietly as the ship passed by overhead. The light from its scanners moved across the sand but did not touch their ship. When it finally drifted away, both exhaled in relief. Ethan looked out the window. We'll leave this planet soon. You deserve to see more than sand and ruins. Lunara nodded slowly. I would like that. I want to see the worlds your kind has built. He grinned. Then tomorrow we fly. That night, as the stars stretched endlessly above them, Lunara sat beside Ethan while he checked the final systems. She watched his hands, his calm patience, the way he treated even broken things with care. It reminded her of how he treated her, never as a legend, never as a tool, but simply as a person. When he looked up, he caught her gaze and smiled. What's on your mind? She hesitated, then said softly, Maybe freedom is not just being unbound. Maybe it's finding someone who lets you exist without fear. Ethan nodded. Sounds about right to me. And for the first time, Lunara felt a quiet certainty inside her heart. Freedom was not a spell or a gift. It was the simple comfort of knowing she was safe, seen, and cared for. She looked out the window again, the stars reflecting in her silver eyes, and whispered to herself, Maybe this is what living truly means. The engines of Ethan's ship roared softly as it lifted from the sand. The desert below grew smaller and smaller until it became a sea of golden light. Lunara stood near the window, her silver eyes wide as she watched the planet fall away beneath them. Her heart raced not from fear but from wonder. For the first time in her long life, she was not trapped inside a lamp or serving a master. She was traveling freely among the stars, not as a legend but as a living being. Ethan smiled as he adjusted the controls. Beautiful, isn't it? Lunara nodded slowly. I have seen the stars from inside my prison for centuries, but never like this. They feel closer now. They feel alive. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Wait until you see the Star Bazaar. It's chaos, but in a good way. You'll see creatures from 100 worlds, foods you can't pronounce, and music you'll never forget. The Star Bazaar? She asked curiously. It's a trading station that floats near the border of 3 systems. I need to sell some old scrap there, and maybe we can get supplies for the ship. Lunara smiled faintly. Then let us go where the stars sing loudest. Hours passed as they traveled through the quiet void. Lunara spent most of the time staring at the view, her reflection mixing with the endless space beyond. Ethan caught her smiling once and said, You're starting to look less like a myth and more like a traveler. Perhaps I'm learning to be both, she said gently. When they finally arrived, the view before her stole her breath. The Star Bazaar floated like a giant flower made of metal and glass. Dozens of docking rings spun around its center, each glowing with colors from 100 different cultures. Ships of every shape and size came and went, sleek alien cruisers, freighters shaped like shells, and small personal crafts like Ethan's. As they entered the docking bay, Lunara's eyes shone with amazement. The moment the ramp opened, sound and light poured in. Voices of many tongues, laughter, the smell of strange spices and metallic air. She stepped carefully onto the platform, taking in every detail. Ethan guided her through the crowded lanes, past stalls that sold glowing fruits, floating crystals, and small robots that whistled while they worked. Lunara's senses were overwhelmed, but her heart was full. Every moment felt like music. Stay close, Ethan said, smiling as she turned her head in every direction. I cannot help it, she whispered. So many lives all shining at once. They stopped at a mechanic's booth where Ethan sold a few engine parts. Lunara stood nearby, fascinated by how easily he spoke to others. Even among aliens twice his height, he was calm and friendly. She realized that this was one of the strange strengths of humans. They could walk into any place and act as if they belonged there. After finishing the trade, Ethan handed her a small cloth pouch. "Here, your share, my share?" she asked, puzzled. "Half the payment," he said with a grin. "You helped me fix the ship, remember?" She looked at the pouch as if it were something sacred. "No one has ever shared anything with me before," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. "Get used to it. Partners share." The word partner echoed in her mind. It made her chest feel warm. They wandered through the market for hours. Lunara tasted her first real food, a soft, glowing fruit that melted on her tongue. She laughed softly, the sound bright and musical. "It feels like sunlight in my mouth," she said. Ethan laughed too. "You have a way with words." As the day went on, they found a quiet corner near a transparent wall overlooking space. Thousands of ships drifted by like fireflies. Lunara leaned against the glass, her eyes reflecting the stars. "So many worlds," she whispered. "All free, all alive. I used to watch them and wonder what it felt like to walk among them." "Now you know," Ethan said. She looked at him, her expression soft. "I do. And I never want to go back to the silence of the lamp again." "You won't," he said firmly. "Not while I'm around." She studied his face for a long moment. "You speak as if you carry promises inside you." He smiled. "Maybe I do." Before she could reply, a soft chime rang through the bazaar. It was the evening tone, signaling that the central lights were dimming to mimic night. The crowd began to thin. Ethan and Lunara found a small resting area near a row of glowing plants. She sat beside him, watching people pass by. They all looked different, yet they lived side by side. "Is this what humans call peace?" "Sort of," he said. "It's not perfect, but it's better than war. People here just try to live, trade, and keep moving forward." Lunara smiled faintly. "Then maybe peace is not silence. Maybe peace is motion without fear." Ethan looked at her, impressed. "You think deeply, don't you?" "I had much time to think when trapped," she said. "But now I would rather live the thoughts instead." He nodded. "That's a good plan." As they sat there, the stars beyond the glass shimmered gently. A soft wind blew through the station's vents, carrying the scent of alien flowers. Lunara closed her eyes, feeling her heart beat in rhythm with the hum of the world around her. "Ethan," she said after a while, "do you ever wish for something more?" He looked at her and smiled. "Not anymore. Why?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then said, "Because sometimes what you find by accident is better than anything you could wish for." Lunara's heart skipped. She looked away, her cheeks warming faintly, though she didn't understand why. That night, as they returned to the ship, the Star Bazaar's lights reflected off the hull like distant fireflies. Lunara stood by the ramp, looking back at the shining station one last time. "Thank you for showing me this," she said. "It feels like the universe finally let me breathe." Ethan smiled. "It's just the beginning." She turned toward him, her voice soft but full of wonder. "Then I look forward to Egghead gently." The ship was small but cozy, a place that finally felt like home to both of them. He turned his chair slightly, looking at her. "You've been staring out there for hours," he said with a small smile. "See something I don't?" Lunara smiled faintly, her voice soft. "I am seeing everything I never could before. The stars look different when you're not watching them from a prison." Ethan nodded slowly. "Freedom changes how everything looks." She turned to face him. "You gave me that. I still don't understand why." He leaned back, thinking for a moment. "Because I know what it feels like to be trapped. Not in a lamp, but in life. I lost people, lost hope, and for a while I stopped believing in anything good. But then I met you," her eyes softened. "And you found hope again?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "Something like that." For a moment, they both sat in silence, letting the hum of the ship fill the space between them. Then Lunara asked, "You still have 2 wishes left. Why haven't you used them?" Ethan smiled gently. "Maybe I already got everything I wanted." She tilted her head. "But wishes are rare. They could change everything." He looked at her carefully. "Sometimes change isn't about magic. It's about moments like this. Sitting with someone who makes the stars seem closer." Lunara's chest felt warm again. That strange, unfamiliar feeling she'd been having more often lately. "You say things that make my heart—" "Move," she whispered. He laughed softly. "Then it's working." Hours later, they landed on a green world called Solara, a planet of wide fields and soft winds. Ethan wanted to trade for fuel and repairs. Lunara followed him down the ramp, her bare feet touching soft grass for the first time. She looked around with pure wonder. "It feels alive beneath me," she said. Ethan smiled. "Welcome to nature. You'll love it." They walked to a nearby village where merchants traded tools, food, and handmade crafts. Lunara's beauty drew quiet stares, but Ethan kept close to her, explaining everything. What fruits were safe to eat, how to greet the locals, how to smile without fear. She listened to every word like a student learning life itself. At sunset, they returned to a hill overlooking the glowing plains. The wind brushed gently through Lunara's silver hair as she sat beside Ethan, the sky painted with gold and violet. "There is something I must tell you," she said softly. He turned to her. "What is it?" "My power is fading faster," she said quietly. "The magic that kept me alive as a spirit is almost gone. Soon I will be fully mortal." Ethan frowned. "Does that scare you?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "It used to. But now I think it's what I want. To live, to feel, to grow old, and these are gifts I never knew." He nodded, his voice gentle. "Then we'll face it together." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "Always together," she repeated, her voice like music. The wind carried their words away, and for a long time they watched the stars appear one by one. Lunara leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, her body warm and real. She could feel his heartbeat under her ear. It was the first time she realized that the sound of life could be more comforting than any ancient song. Later that night, she stood beside him as he repaired a broken sensor. The glow of the tools lit his face in soft orange light. Without thinking, she asked quietly, "Ethan, if you could make one more wish, what would it be?" He looked at her, surprised. "I told you I don't need to." "But if you could," she insisted, "what would you say?" He smiled gently. "All right then, I wish—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I wish you find peace with who you are." Lunara froze, her silver eyes wide. "Peace and with who I am?" He nodded. "You've spent so long being something for others. A servant, a legend, a wish-granter. You deserve to just be you." Her breath trembled. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever wished something for her. She stepped closer, tears shining faintly in her eyes. "You could have asked for anything, power, wealth, even immortality. And you wished for me to be at peace?" Ethan smiled softly. "Peace is something worth sharing." A single tear rolled down her cheek, glowing faintly in the dim light. "You are a strange creature, Ethan Cole," she whispered. "Strange and kind beyond reason." He laughed gently. "That's just human nature." She looked up at him, her voice trembling like starlight. "Then I am glad humanity still exists." They stood in silence, the wind moving softly around them. The night sky shimmered with constellations, and for the first time in her eternal life, Lunara felt complete, not as a genie, not as a myth, but as someone who was finally seen. One evening, as the orange sun fell behind the hills, Lunara stood at the doorway watching the fading light. Ethan was sitting near a small fire outside, carving a piece of wood into the shape of a bird. His hands moved carefully, his face calm as always. She smiled softly. "You still work even when the day ends," she said. He looked up, grinning. "Old habits. Besides, this keeps me busy while you make the stars jealous." She tilted her head, pretending to be confused. "Jealous?" Ethan chuckled. "Because you shine brighter than them sometimes." Lunara laughed quietly, though her cheeks warmed slightly. Even after all this time, his words still made her heart flutter in a way she didn't understand fully. "You speak in such strange ways," she said, sitting beside him. "That's called talking like a friend," he said gently. "Then I am glad I learned the language of friendship," she replied, her voice soft. For a while, they just sat together, watching the sky. Fireflies floated around them like tiny stars. The air smelled of flowers and wood smoke. The peace between them was so natural it felt like part of the world itself. But that night, as they sat in silence, Lunara looked at Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "Ethan," she said, "do you remember the first wish you made?" He smiled faintly. "Of course." "I wished for your freedom, and the second?" she asked. "I wished for you to find peace with yourself," he said softly. She nodded slowly, her silver eyes glowing in the firelight. "Then what about your third? You never used it." He looked into the flames for a moment, the light dancing across his face. "I've thought about it many times," he said. But I think I finally know what I want to wish for. Lunara's expression grew curious. And what is that? Ethan turned toward her, his eyes calm and filled with something deep and kind. I wish humanity never forgets what freedom truly means. The air around them grew still. Even the wind seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Lunara stared at him, her eyes wide. Ethan, she whispered, that wish is not small. It touches everything. He smiled softly. That's the point. It's not just about me or you. It's about everyone who ever felt trapped. In chains, in pain, in silence. If they remember what freedom means, maybe they'll fight to protect it. Lunara's heart trembled. She felt something awaken deep inside her. Something that had been quiet since the lamp was destroyed. The air shimmered faintly around them, and the stars above seemed to pulse with light. Your wish, she said slowly. It carries power. It is reaching beyond this world. Ethan looked up at the glowing sky. Then let it reach as far as it can. Lunara closed her eyes. Her body began to shine gently, not with magic, but with pure light. The energy around her moved like a wave, spreading out into the stars. Across distant systems, people would later speak of a strange pulse of warmth that filled the sky one night, a feeling of peace that made them think of home, of kindness, of freedom. No one knew where it came from, but it reached every heart that needed it. When the light faded, Lunara opened her eyes again. She looked tired but peaceful. Ethan reached out, holding her hand gently. You okay? He asked. She smiled softly. It's strange, she said. Your wish didn't take anything from me. It gave something back instead. I feel lighter, as if I've finally finished what I was made for. Ethan squeezed her hand. You were never made to serve anyone, Lunara. You were made to live. Tears shimmered in her eyes. And I did. Because of you. He shook his head with a warm smile. Because of us. They sat quietly under the sky that still shimmered faintly from the last trace of magic. The wind carried a gentle hum, like a song only the stars could hear. Lunara leaned against his shoulder, her voice soft. Do you think your wish will be remembered? Ethan looked at the horizon where dawn was beginning to rise. If even one person learns kindness from it, then yes, it will last forever. She smiled, closing her eyes. Then that is enough. As the first light of morning touched the hills, the world seemed to glow anew. The birds sang softly, and the river below caught the sunlight like glass. Ethan and Lunara stayed side by side, watching the new day begin. Over the years, travelers who passed by would speak of a small house on a green world where a human and a woman of light lived together in peace. Some said she was a fallen star. Others whispered she was a spirit who had chosen love over power. But those who met them never forgot the warmth they felt in their presence. A quiet kindness that reminded them that even in a vast universe, humanity still carried light. And somewhere in the heart of that peaceful valley, as the wind moved through the flowers, Lunara's gentle voice would sometimes echo softly, as if carried by the stars themselves. Your wish is granted. My human,